evening and welcome to Conversations with Lothrop. This is Dick Lothrop speaking, and I'll be your host for the next 30 or so minutes with our distinguished guest this evening. We have with us Michael Sigg, who is Director of Public Works for the City of Oberlin. And we're delighted, Mike, that you're here tonight and will share some city information with us and possibly answer some questions from the audience. We hope we have a good audience tonight out there in TV land. A little bit about you first. You grew up in Antwerp, Ohio?
Yes, a town of about 1,200 people that's just on the Indiana line, just outside of Fort Wayne, Indiana.
When I first saw Antwerp, I thought, gee, I didn't know he came from Belgium, but then I realized that this was probably not that. And then you went to Bowling Green.
Went to Bowling Green, and after graduation, for a short period, I was a probation officer, and then went to work for the state. And after leaving the state, I've worked in mental health, alcohol, substance abuse, and cities. This is the third town I've worked for, and I've also worked for 2 mental health boards in between.
Well, one time you thought about social work, didn't you?
Well, like I say, I was a probation officer for a while, and found that...
Was that for the county?
Yeah, it was down at Seneca County, actually. I was a probation officer there and decided that just really wasn't the way of life I thought was good. You get some interesting situations, but I think it can make you very old very quickly.
I would think it might. And particularly today would be even more tense, I would think. And when you were working with the state, were you in personnel of some kind?
State, I was with the Division of Personnel. We operated most of the training and employment grants that were being operated throughout the state, the old CETA programs and the EEA programs and things like that.
So that got you into municipal contacts as well. Tell us how you got into local government. How did you?
Again, I was working for the state and left there and went to work for a mental health board near my hometown that needed some help. And then when I was done there, I looked around and was interviewed in Swanton, Ohio, which is a little suburb just outside of Toledo, and was hired there as their very first village administrator. They'd had a Board of Public Affairs prior to that time. It was, again, a small bedroom community just outside of Toledo, and a lot of at that point, there a lot of the problems of the small suburbs, the old town versus the new town, the people coming out, and Toledo was moving in that direction. So I was there for several years and worked for a year then for private industry, and from there went to Bellevue, Ohio, where I was safety service director, which is similar to city manager, but it's under a strong mayor system. I was appointed by the mayor, but I had fire, police, the whole gamut.
Plus all the public works.
Right, yes. Water, sewer. And after that, I went back into mental health for about 3 years. Not in therapy myself, but...
not yet, anyway.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
And after about 4 years there, saw this advertisement, interviewed, and was hired.
What attracted you to Oberlin?
I wanted to work in a college town. I've always, I felt that a college community was going to offer itself a lot more, and things that I hadn't experienced yet. Again, Swanton was a typical bedroom community. Bellevue is a very blue-collar, working-class community based on the railroad. I was, intrigued by Oberlin and what it had to offer, and was going to be, a change from any place I'd worked before.
And you now live in Norwalk, is that right?
Yes, I live on the east side of Norwalk. My wife's a teacher in Norwalk. She teaches kindergarten, first, second grade special education in Norwalk.
You can help her with your former background. You can advise her sometimes on the special
I don't have the patience that woman has, either with her children or probably with someone like me.
And before we get into the questions, I've got to ask you this. You're a bicycle enthusiast, right?
Yes.
Do you ride back and forth from Norwalk? Or have you ever done that?
Oh, yeah, several times. Usually not to work, but if I have to come in on weekends in the summer, or, when I, come to town when I don't have to worry about what my appearance will be once I get there, I'll ride bike into town. It's actually fairly, it's only 19 miles, so it's a fairly short ride by.
Do you use Route 20? Come out of Route
Yeah, just right down 20.
Well, let's get into what you do for the City of Oberlin. Director of Public Works, that means you head a number of areas. It's a large department.
Yeah.
And I've written down some of these, and I thought maybe we could talk about the challenges of them and any plans you have for them, or anything you want to say about them. And I didn't take these in any particular order. First, I have the cemetery.
Cemetery is something that I've had less than a year. Prior to that, it was under the direction of the Community Services Director. And then when Ron left and they decided to reorganize and to bring somebody into in more of a pure planning mode, the cemetery was moved over to me. So I'm still learning the cemetery. When I was in Bellevue, we also operated the cemetery. There is a long-term plans for expansion right now. We've paved a lot of roads over the last couple of years, along with Ron and I. We were able to get a lot of the roads paved. We do have a plan to continue to improve the pavement and ultimately to expand the cemetery. For the next year, probably the biggest project is to put in an office of sort, because we really don't have a place out there right now where if a family, especially in inclement weather, if someone needs to sit down and take a look at the maps and see where maybe they would like to buy a plot, we don't have any place. So you sort of move the carburetors off the picnic table and work there. So the big project right now is just try to improve that customer interface. Parking lots, we don't have a stoned lot for visitors, or I mean a paved lot. So that's the project for this year in the cemetery. Cemetery operates very well. We've got as in all the operations that I have, I'm lucky. I've got a tremendous staff. Mike Ives is the chief out at the cemetery. Does an outstanding job of keeping the place looking good. The cemetery is a very interesting cemetery, and I'm sure you're aware of the new book that's come out.
I was going to talk about the new book. It came to me today in the mail, and I got engrossed in it.
It's fascinating.
I checked first and found I was not buried out there, which was a great relief, and I could get on with tonight's program and so forth. But seriously, that is a great book, and I hope people who don't get one because they made a contribution will pick one up. I think OHIO has, and there'll be in other places, because it's a very, very attractive format and a great job I think has been done with it.
And a tremendous memorial to Frank Zabowski also.
Yes. We were very fortunate some time ago to have him, and that's all we talked about was the cemetery, and his deep devotion to it and to the city was so very, very prominent throughout that whole interview, and we're just very thrilled we did that when we did, because...
well, he's missed in a lot of areas, because Frank had been around so many years. If we had a question, for instance, about the Kipton water line or something, if we couldn't find any records, the standard rule was, well, see if you can go talk to Frank. And, and he was a walking encyclopedia about the community, not just the cemetery, but really public works, the streets, everything. It was quite a gentleman.
We miss him. We miss him. And if somebody was going to buy a lot, they would go out to the cemetery.
Yes.
They don't go to City Hall.
No,
they go out to
they go out to the lot or the cemetery, and we can take a look. In nice weather, obviously, you can do that work out in the cemetery. Again, we would like to have a place inside where people, especially when it's bad weather, that maybe you could drive through, and then we could go back and take a look at the map and show them what we were looking at.
Good. Okay, let's move to people's favorite. We have two here that people just love, the sewer system. Let's talk about sanitary sewers, wastewater treatment. Are there expansions in the works, improvements, changes?
We've, actually right now we have design work done for an expansion of the wastewater plant. The plant is treating very well. The quality of the product we're putting out is good. We do have some deterioration, some work that's going to have to be done, because wastewater plants the fact that they deal in water and they're outside, they're very susceptible to ice damage and wear and tear. So there's a lot of updating that needs to be done in that repair. Also, the discussion of the stormwater. We have a tremendous amount of stormwater entering the sanitary sewer system, and the debate is always how best to address that. Do we need to tighten up the sewers, maybe put in new sewers at tremendous expense, or do we expand the wastewater plant to handle those additional flows, again at tremendous expense? The preliminary estimate right now on the project is about $1.5 million, and right now it is pretty much on hold because looking at financing options. Council looked at it and determined with the debt load that we have already and the rates that we have, it wasn't feasible simply to go ahead, borrow $1.5 million and put it on the rate structure. Already, and I can't remember the exact number this year, but approximately, I think about 48 cents on every dollar in sewer rates is going for debt service already.
So I've heard it is high. Yeah.
We're loaded up very heavily with debt, and I think council needs to, or wanted to take a look at that financing and maybe come up, see if there's some sort of alternatives that maybe to simply tacking something else on the rates, because they, again, admittedly, our rates are very high in wastewater. People wonder a lot of times, why is my sewer bill higher than the water bill? Well, we treat a lot more. In a normal day, we we produce in the neighborhood of 800,000 gallons of water, and during some rainstorms, we get in excess of 14 million gallons. So the volume of water we have to treat at the wastewater plant is much higher than the water plant. And secondly, the amount of treatment necessary from starting point to ending point, the amount of materials you have to remove, obviously, is much higher out of the sewer flow. So we welcome anybody that's interested to come on down and take a look at the plant. We have a very good plant. The plant is a Class 4. It's one of the highest rated. Plants are rated from Class 1 to Class 4. Ours is a Class 4. It provides an amazing treatment process. Looking at the flow coming out, we not only don't deteriorate the flow in Plum Creek, the flow below the plant, the water quality below the plant is substantially better than it is before it gets to the plant.
I remember Art Bishop, who's now retired, who was a longtime director out there. That's not the right title. Superintendent. Said to me one time that the water coming out was almost as pure as the drinking water, and he would drink a cup of it if I would. And we both decided we'd postpone that till a different day. But
there's actually in some areas, the water at coming out of the wastewater plant must meet higher standards. Copper's an instance. The human body and safe drinking water can have a much higher level of copper than what we're allowed to discharge. We would not be permitted to take water from the tap and discharge it directly to the stream. For instance, we disinfect, we have to chlorinate, we chlorinate the wastewater stream. We have to dechlorinate afterwards. We have to remove the chlorine back out. So the water we put in, with some exceptions, there's viral issues and things like that, but it is in some cases, within some parameters, is actually cleaner than the water coming out or that you would drink. The parameters are set by federal standards. We have actually a permit where the plant has to be a licensed operation, and the state gives us a long list of parameters we have to meet. What can our copper level be? What can the turbidity? What can be the BOD? All sorts of tests have to be run, and we send them reports showing the daily operations of that wastewater plant. So it's under close scrutiny.
And those regulations have tightened up over the last 10, 15 years markedly.
Yeah, and I think for good reason. I grew up on the Maumee River, which comes out of Fort Wayne, and when I was growing up, it was nothing but an open sewer. And I was lucky enough a few years ago with some friends to canoe the whole distance from Fort Wayne to Toledo, Ohio, and the quality of water is so much better. The quality of Lake Erie is so much better. When I was in school, I remember a drawing, or in my geography book or Ohio history or something, a map showing Lake Erie with the big circle in the center, and that was the dead area. So we've made tremendous progress, I think, environmentally. But it's not without cost.
You talked about the treatment, and there's a term I wanted you to explain, because when our plant was built, it was one of the few, quote, tertiary treatment, unquote, plants of its kind in the state. What does that mean, tertiary?
Well, tertiary, again, we have primary treatment, which is normally just settling out. Secondary treatment. The tertiary referred to the fact that there were actually three levels of treatment.
I see. Okay.
We are now beyond that. We have added treatment facilities on top of that, primarily in ammonia, to remove ammonia from the stream. So we are actually past, or post-tertiary now. I don't think they've come up for there's not a common word.
Common word for it. But people can go out there and take a tour of the place.
Absolutely. Welcome them.
Take a sniff and see how we're doing out there.
Well, I enjoy wastewater plants. I enjoy being out to also, if they want to visit Oasis, which is right behind the wastewater plant, they can take a look at taking home a pet.
Let's go now to storm sewers, which are, of course, attached in a way more perhaps than we wish they were. A perennial source of problems and controversy. Now, if I'm right, we have an old system.
Yes.
We have interconnections that we're trying to locate, and we have too much inflow from stormwater. Are those the three basic?
Yes. When it starts to rain, we have a storm sewer system and a sanitary system, but the amount of water entering the sanitary system, especially in the older sections, just completely overloads the plant. Again, our plant, we produce in town probably about 800,000 to 900,000 gallons of sewage a day. The plant is able to treat easily 2.5 million gallons, but when the rain flows come in, they just overwhelm the plant. What we have then is we have what's called a retention lagoon, where part of the flow can be diverted into basically a large reservoir, and that can fill, and then hopefully the rain stops before that gets completely full, and as the flows then drop to the plant, we start pumping back through. So the idea is all the water that is captured should be treated. There are times when that lagoon, though, even fills up. It then overflows, or it's actually chlorinated. It's not just dumped directly. We do disinfect and dump, but that's something that federal EPA is very concerned about, is what they call a combined sewer overflow.
So we may need another retention basin out there.
Yes, that was one of the things we were looking at in the plan, was an additional retention basin. And again, the question is always, how much money do we put into the sewers versus how much in the plant? And that's something we're working also in the sewers. We have a new engineer that just started. We're very fortunate to get a very experienced person, and one of his primary charges will be to look at this whole, what we call I&I, the inflow infiltration, and what can we do to try to get the most bang for the buck. You'd never end up with a totally tight system. You're always going to have some flow fluctuations, but to try to get that under control or down to a more manageable level.
Now, his name is Keith Johnson.
Keith Johnson, yes.
People will be meeting him, we hope, in the near future, and so forth.
I can't describe how pleased I was to get somebody of his caliber and his stature.
And he's going to concentrate on the sewer system, pretty much. Sewer.
Yeah, he'll be doing a lot of our. He'll be doing most of our design work as far as roadway, water line, sewer line, those types of projects. We've got a project going out to water plant, looking at what its long-term needs are. But again, one of the primary things, in addition to doing design work, is to concentrate on this whole issue of keeping the stormwater out of the sewer, or is there cost-effective ways to do that?
And that's, of course, something we're never going to fully eliminate.
No.
Is it realistic?
I mean, we hope to better manage it. We'll never solve the problem, as somebody pointed out one time, that the best we do is to try to manage it.
And something I notice all over northern Ohio seems to be a problem in severe rains.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Again, it doesn't matter what you build for. You can always have a heavier rain than you built for. But ours, we have too many places where the lines become overloaded too often.
And, of course, we were initially, and I've sometimes reminded people of this, We were built in this is a swamp originally, which is why we got it in the first place.
There are some things that, you know, again, every town I've lived in has had some topographic idiosyncrasies, and yeah, in this case, yes, you have a very dense soil. You don't have much water percolating through the soil. The water that falls runs off. This clay it stays very damp, and so the runoff that we have is going to exceed what you might have maybe in some place that has maybe a sandier soil.
So we'll hear more about improvements on that. And
yes.
People, I understand, citizens have all kinds of theories about this and so forth.
And again, it's not an issue. I don't think there is a solution. I think there's a series of management tactics, management practices that we're going to have to look at and decide which ones are the most cost effective, where we can get the most bang for the buck. There's no magic wand. There's no quick fix. No sure cure. It's just going to be a very slow, methodical. Lincoln Street, for instance, we paved that this summer. We spent a lot of time televising the inside of that sewer, looking for bad spots. So before
that's
we
right, you've got a camera now that's
yes,
very sophisticated.
Yes, we've got some very sophisticated equipment, and we spent a lot of time looking for problem areas within that sewer so that we could patch them, fix them before the new street went in on top, and we'll be doing a lot more of that.
You find quite a few things when you do that?
Yes, we found quite a few, found some very significant sources. You know, so again, whether it's obviously not enough within one street that's going to make any appreciable difference, but every little bit helps.
There's a cliche, a drop in a bucket, and the fewer drops in that bucket, the better in a hard storm.
So it's going to be a long, methodical process, and applying those practices that we see to be the most cost effective.
Good. We're now at the point where we can take a break, and we will be back very shortly, and we'll take up streets when we come back. Something always of a great interest, and the number will be scrolled, I believe, on the screen. So if you want to ask any questions of our guests or make any comments, please give us a call. And we'll be back in just a minute or so.
The world's greatest concert attraction is back. Ladies and gentlemen, the Rolling Stones, live in your home on pay-per-view. Bridges to Babylon World Tour. Critics say the rock show of the year.
The Stones like you've never seen. The Stones like you've never heard them before.
December 12th, the Rolling Stones, live on pay-per-view.
Rolling Stones all over your living room.
From start to finish.
You're not going to believe the remodel that we have for you today.
See the transformation take place before your very eyes on HGTV's Before and After.
We're never short of wows on this show.
Each week, host Pat Simpson tackles major home renovations. And Before and After stays on the job site for the entire remodeling project. Watch Before and After. Come home for the holidays with Carol Duvall and HGTV. Carol Duvall's Christmas takes you on a Yuletide tour of Carol's hometown to visit the people and places special to her. Get great holiday ideas from local craftspeople and artisans. Plus, Carol leads you through a winter wonderland and gives her fans a special Christmas gift.
Well, as promised, here we are at my house.
Carol Duvall's Christmas.
Welcome back with our guest, Director of Public Works for the City of Oberlin, Mike Sigg. And we want to get on now to streets. I believe there's a 5-year street plan, which is sort of a flexible document.
Yes.
Changes by the day almost sometimes.
Well, yeah, because again, it's one of the interesting things about, we were talking earlier about the soil conditions, is that because you've got this clay that holds moisture, there's a lot more differential heaving. Manholes that maybe are an inch low during sometimes the year are 2 inches high, or because not the manholes move, but the street actually moves up and down. So we have to be somewhat flexible in the plan, because a street that looked like maybe it was a second tier last year, because of a variety of reasons, just really falls apart this year. We have done very well, I think, with the 5-year program. And again, it's a evergreen type program. Each year we add another year to the out year. And with the level of funding we've been able to get and what we're projecting over the next 5 to 6 years, we really believe that we're going to be on top of the streets. We've done a lot of streets. Of course, the drawback is in some cases we've sort of knocked off some of the littler ones, and we're going to get into some very large projects down this road.
Of course, your big one this year has been Park Grafton.
Park Grafton, that's
rebuild totally.
$1,012,000 for that stretch of Park Grafton Street. We also were able to get Lincoln Street, and that the whole Presidential Estates area was resurfaced, and some minor work. Not minor work. We overlaid all of Artino Street and had actually replaced a section of that in concrete. So we've had a good year. We've been very busy this last summer with construction. On top of that, we've had catch basin projects going on. So we pretty well got about every corner of town torn up.
Well, that's what people call their tax dollars at work.
Yeah, that's how you know Public Works is active, is we tear things up.
Yeah. Mike, tell me, how many miles of streets does Oberlin have?
I believe about 32 miles.
32 miles of streets.
Lane miles of streets is what is the number that's always used. We're in the process of developing, again with the engineering and a geographic information, a GIS system. We're computerizing a lot of this information, which will give us a better handle on what we have and ages and things like that. But that's the number that's always been used.
And I heard today that the state is going to give up maintenance of state highways within Oberlin.
That's a nasty rumor that I think unfortunately may be true. Up till now, the state has taken care of resurfacing and rebuilding with some in cooperation with the city. For instance, South Main and this year Main-Lorraine Street, North Main and Lorraine Street, the city paid 100% of all the curb work and the catch basin and the drainage work. The state then took care of the asphalt work. We understand that the state is saying that in cities they will no longer do that, that they will continue to resurface county and township areas of state highway, but the cities are going to have to accept the responsibility for the city portion. So that could have some major impacts. Again, not next year or the year after. Main Street's in pretty good shape.
East Lorraine, you just got done.
We got East Lorraine done. We've got all of Main Street within the last couple of years has been curbed and paved. But eventually that will, if that policy is implemented, and there's been rumblings for some time by this Department of Transportation that this was the policy they're going to take. It could have some very major impacts. Part of the question is going to revolve around how will the federal funds. The State Department of Transportation gets approximately 80% of its money from federal highway funds, and whether those funds will pass back to the local community directly, that the city of Oberlin, when we get ready to pave West Lorraine Street, would be automatically get 80% of it from federal, or whether that's going to be channeled through NOACA, through a regional, and maybe the regional would decide that federal money, instead of being distributed out to to Oberlin, should go to downtown Cleveland. We don't know what the implications of that are. So
we might just say that NOACA is the Northeast clearinghouse, or clearinghouse for the Northeast section, where federal funds are dispersed for this kind of public works, and we don't always get what we hope we're going to get.
Yeah, there's the major metro. If in fact the money is all put into a single pot and then divvied up on a competitive basis, Oberlin is at a serious disadvantage. I mean, we start talking about a road that maybe the thousands of people use, and City of Cleveland can talk about roads that millions of people can use. So if it's done on a competitive basis, we're going to be at a severe disadvantage and could end up holding a rather large bag on state highway resurfacing.
It's going to be rough. Let's turn to sidewalks. I tremble to do this because that's been a controversial and vexing subject at times. Do you have any thoughts on this and how the city might go? Or
only personal thoughts.
Only personal. Well, just share those with us, would you? If you care to?
I personally like sidewalks. I mean, as a homeowner, if I was looking to buy a house, I'd look for a place with sidewalks and front porches. I think that was getting people walking, getting people interacting is a good thing in a community. As far as the sidewalk program, and again, I've worked in different towns that have had different takes on how to do this, from a replace and install in every location to totally laissez-faire. They'll be fixed when people feel like fixing them. So it's as we say sometimes, that's just purely a policy decision. That's something council will have to wrestle with.
I've been interested in reading here and there that this is a program that goes back, well, actually it was one of the first things our first city manager was told to do by the then council, 1926, to do something about the deplorable condition of urban sidewalks. And then I read something the other day about 1916. Council was discussing this problem, and so there doesn't seem to be any end to it. It's a favorite thing that keeps coming up.
It may be like the stormwater. It's something that you can only manage. I've never been any place that had a sidewalk program or didn't have a sidewalk program. The place where I've worked that didn't have any sidewalk program, it was also a problem there. So I don't know that anybody has ever come up with a magic solution to that one.
And it gives people something to talk about. That's important. Trees. Do we have a tree planting program?
Yeah, we do. We have the V-Long Nursery where we buy bare root seedlings and then nurture them until they're large enough to be transplanted. And usually that comes as a request. Maybe we've cut down a tree, or somebody wants another tree, or as landscape. Again, they are used in public areas, the curb lawn, not backyards. Yes. As far as the maintenance of existing trees, we're going to try. We have a very limited budget for that, and I've been working very closely with Bob Morse at the electric plant because they also have needs for trees, and this year we're going to go up for a single bid between electric and buildings and grounds, because we believe that maybe if we would piggyback onto the electric departments, I mean, if somebody's already going out and doing line clearance on a tree.
You're talking about tree trimming.
Right,
now,
the tree trimming.
Not planting of trees,
right.
Okay.
To try to maintain the trees we have. As far as planting, if people want a tree, they can give us a call, and usually I'll send Mike Ives out, and he'll take a look and see what might be appropriate, and then look at the V-Long and nursery and see what he might have that would work there. We also have a program that has been used in the past where if we don't have anything suitable, that we will assist, and I believe the number, pardon me, because I've not had this aspect that long. I've only had the trees for about 8 months now. I believe it's up to $100 towards the planting. If we don't have anything suitable and somebody can find something at a commercial nursery, we'll assist in the cost of purchasing that tree.
But you do like to have people check with you before they plant things on the curb lawn?
Absolutely. But again, trees are very important to the community, not only visually, but also oxygen as far as the whole environment. And again, we've been talking with Bob Morris, who's director of the electric department, that he would like to get involved more in planting of trees also, because that can help to be used when we're considering the carbon dioxide that maybe we can emit from the generating plant when they're doing peak shaving. That part of that can be offset by trees and the oxygen production and the carbon dioxide.
You also have to be careful that trees on curb lawns don't get into the electric wires.
Yes,
so there's a type of tree you'd want and type you wouldn't want.
Right. And how wide is the right of the area, because some trees are very good at lifting up sections of sidewalk.
Trees takes us right into parks. Let's start thinking about parks. How many parks does the city have?
Well, I think we've got a fairly extensive park system. The major parks would be the Spring Street Park, Park Street Park, and the Bill Long Nature Preserve. Then we have some smaller, for instance, Legion Field and things like that.
The Wright Park would be an example.
Wright Park, Martin Luther King Park.
That's right.
The interesting thing, and this is something that I know the open space is interested in, is that we seem to have a corridor connecting, for instance, the bike path over at Spring and Street, connecting to Park Street, which would then connect in through the downtown district. And I know they're very interested in maybe getting some survey work done and to find out exactly how much property we do have in those corridors, with the idea of tying that whole park system together into.
One time there was supposed to be a walkway through the whole thing, which was a gift, I thought.
Right.
This is back many, many years ago, I think.
Yeah, and we do own land. I think that's one of the things we're looking at. They're not sure exactly where the boundaries are, how wide it is, and exactly where it is in relationship to the stream. But I know that's something they're very interested in, is clearing that so that, again, you can walk from the bike path, you can walk all the way through Spring Street Park over to Park Street Park. You're right into the downtown district. Creates another corridor.
Are there upkeep problems you have, or things you wish people would do or not do? Can people help with the upkeep?
Well, I think we're very fortunate. We don't have the vandalism. I mean, there's always some, but I don't really believe that we have a huge vandalism problem. I think that people do respect the parks. People use the parks. Which is important. The more people use the parks, the less problems you're going to have in them. Parks that aren't used are the ones where you have the problems. But I think we've had very good luck. I think people respect them, and in spite of once in a while some publicized problem, that I've seen it much worse other areas. I think the people in town appreciate what they do have and do a nice job of helping to keep them up.
You mentioned the bike path, and that's going well, isn't it, as far as we can tell?
Yeah, the bike path is heavily used, and I think will be even more heavily used because Lorain County Metro Park system is extending it both to the east and to the west. It'll extend from Lorain all the way out to the county line. Most of it is completed on the west end, and the Rails to Trails Association has now purchased the right-of-way through Huron County. Will then connect up to Sandusky County, and the plan is that this bike path will eventually go all the way to Montpelier, Ohio. So it could become one of the premier bike paths in the state, I believe. And if you've had a chance to go to maybe the Cuyahoga County Metro Parks, or maybe the bike path that's down from Mansfield out to Butler, Ohio, they're heavily used. Not just bicycles used. I was down at Xenia recently for the state Rails to Trails ride. They had about an annual ride, and the number of people who weren't on the ride, I mean, from rollerbladers to people walking, people of all ages, children and tricycles. The bike paths are very heavily used. Again, if you go down to Mansfield or get on the path, you can go out to Butler, Ohio, and all along the way you see people out and talking to each other and interacting with each other.
Now, is it the plan that the Metro Parks rangers will be patrolling the whole thing, including ours?
Yeah, that's been the discussion, that it would be one agency doing the patrol. We would obviously take care of the maintenance of our section, but that they would patrol the whole distance from out beyond Kipton to Lorain. Okay. So I'm real excited about that. I think it's going to be a great thing, and I think that you'll see a lot of people using it.
And next summer is the great opening
Yes.
of that. Yes. Well, we got one more category. Let's tackle garbage, trash, brush, recycling. Any comments?
Oh, well, the refuse system I think is going well. We expanded this year, and we think that ultimately it's going to have some positive effects for the residents. We were able to pick up the college on a competitive bid situation, and that has allowed us to go to the next step as far as size. We were pretty much strapped about as far as we could go with what we had. We were running 3 people to run refuse and recycling. With the college, we were able to add a 4th person, which is going to allow us to purchase some smaller equipment for use in residential. One of the big problems we have is that we've got one size fits all. We've got the huge truck, which you need to do the big commercial, but is rather difficult maneuvering down Elm Street. So we're going to be able to separate the residential from the commercial, and we think that's going to have some good effects. The recycling program, which we started in 1994, has been very well received. We have a very high rate of utilization. We do random surveys from time to time, just get some people uptown, and we'll start calling to see what people think about it, whether they're using it, whether they're not using it. We seem to have a very high utilization, which is borne out also by what we see in the field. And we're always interested, and we do have a resource recovery committee that is always looking for areas and is willing to and anxious to take input from people how the system could be made better. The 3-bag limit is always an issue.
And of course, brush is always a perennial.
Yeah, brush,
leaves and those
brush
things.
and leaves, and Mother Nature has not cooperated at all
This
with
has
leaves
not
this
been
year.
a good year.
No, we actually started 2 weeks early, and I'm glad we did. We were actually able to make one complete pass. Now, a lot of the leaves weren't out, but we were able to get some of them out. And then we got hit with the snow, and they're frozen now. We're picking up leaves, but it's going to go very slowly.
There's still trees that haven't dropped their leaves yet.
Yeah,
particularly ones the town has planted. I've noticed that. Sweet gums are an example. They're still clinging.
But this is not a good year for leaf collection. We're not happy.
Yeah. Mike, any final thoughts?
No, like I say, we're our goal is to provide services to the residents. We're always interested in constructive comments that people have. Again, we may not be able to accommodate everybody. We can't do all things to all people, but we're interested in getting the feedback and trying to improve the services.
And one thing that I gather is you have a superb staff pretty much through the whole thing.
I've got an amazing staff. Bill Waslick out at the water plant, Maria Waslick is wastewater superintendent, David Rutker, who's in charge of basically everything that nobody else wants to do, from streets to buildings and grounds. Mike Ives does a superb job. We've got a very good staff.
Jeff Bauman in recycling is excellent, I gather, yes.
I don't want to miss anybody, but I think Oberlin's very lucky. We've got a superb staff. Again, I've worked in several communities, and I wouldn't trade the group I've got for any place else. They work very good. They work very hard. They're very concerned about the community.
One final question. When you first came in 1992, I think it was September, you were interviewed by the News Tribune. And in that you said, and I'm paraphrasing this, you were enjoying Oberlin and you were trying to learn the ins and outs of Oberlin. And 5 years later, have you learned the ins and outs?
I don't think Oberlin, I think Oberlin's a wonderful community. I don't think anybody ever learns the ins and outs of Oberlin.
I suspect you're right. Mike, we're so happy you were here. We have a gift for you. This is a Conversations with the Lothrop mug that we give you. With,
I've been known to drink a cup of coffee from that.
Yes, and we know that you do, and you can certainly use that. And we'll also give you a tape of this. And we're so glad you could be here with us. And
thanks, sir.
We will not be having our program in December. We're going to take that month off. We'll be back in January with another interesting guest. So until then, this is Richard Lothrop saying thank you so much for being with us this evening, and good night.